Dallas police investigating after a woman was found dead in an East Oak Cliff home on Sunday. Family says her body was found in a freezer. Dallas Fire Rescue responded to a fire at the same address hours after police were there.
Someone found her inside a freezer, inside an abandoned house on a street in East Oak Cliff, Dallas, where people came and went and nobody asked too many questions. She had been there long enough for her body to freeze completely. Long enough that when investigators finally got her to the medical examiner, they had to wait for her to thaw before they could even begin to understand what had been done to her. And then, hours after she was found, the house burned. Think about that sequence. Found in a freezer. House burns hours later. No suspect named. No cause of death confirmed. No arrests made. Just a community left standing outside the ash asking questions that nobody in authority has answered yet. This is CrimePattern. Every case gets the attention it deserves regardless of the neighborhood it happened in or the life the victim was living. If this is your first time here, subscribe, because this one is not over. Her name was Mariah Murray. She was 27 years old. She was somebody's family. She was somebody's person. And the people who loved her have been very clear about one thing since the moment they found out she was gone. She did not deserve what happened to her. Her family described her as a good spirit, someone who loved to laugh. The kind of person whose energy you feel when they walk into a room and whose absence leaves something behind that is hard to name. That is who Mariah was to the people closest to her. Not a statistic. Not a file number. A 27-year-old woman with a laugh that people remember. Now here is something that some outlets would quietly leave out of this story. But this is not that kind of coverage. Mariah had a history in Dallas County. Nearly a dozen charges over recent years. The overwhelming majority of them were minor. Fare evasion on the DART transit system. Small infractions that speak far less to who she was as a person and far more to the circumstances she was moving through. Her family acknowledged that she faced challenges. One relative said she had options but that people choose what they want. Another said that maybe she was around the wrong people. That people make mistakes. Pause there. Because that is one of the most honest things a grieving family can say. They are not painting a perfect picture. They are telling the truth about someone they loved. The truth is that Mariah Murray, like every single person on this earth, was complicated. She had struggles. She made choices that put her in difficult places. But none of that, not one part of any of that, explains what happened to her on Georgia Avenue. None of it makes her life worth less. None of it makes her death acceptable. What it does do is help us understand the world she was navigating. There is one geographic detail that connects directly to that world. The Illinois Avenue DART station sits right behind the property on Georgia Avenue where her body was found. The same transit system where most of her charges originated backs directly up to the house where she ended up. That is not a coincidence worth ignoring. It is part of the map of her life that investigators are piecing together right now. Now let us talk about East Oak Cliff, because the neighborhood matters in this story, and it rarely gets the introduction it deserves. East Oak Cliff is one of the oldest parts of Dallas. It sits south of the Trinity River and carries decades of history inside it, the kind of history that does not make it into tourism brochures but shapes everything about how the community works and how it is treated by the systems around it. It is a neighborhood that has faced disinvestment, that has watched resources flow elsewhere, that has learned over generations to advocate loudly for itself because quiet did not get results. The people of East Oak Cliff are not strangers to loss, but that does not mean they are used to it, and it does not mean they accept it. When Mariah's body was found, the community did not stay silent. Community leaders came forward quickly and said something that every person following this case needs to hear. There are witnesses. The property on Georgia Avenue was not a secret. It was a known location. People moved through it regularly. The foot traffic was heavy enough and consistent enough that investigators believe multiple people saw things directly relevant to what happened to Mariah. Which means that right now, somewhere in Dallas, someone is sitting on information that this family desperately needs. Her family has said it plainly. Somebody saw something. Somebody needs to speak up. Now let us go deeper into what the discovery itself tells us. Because the details of how Mariah was found are not just disturbing. They are investigatively significant in ways worth understanding. Her body was found inside a freezer. The Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office received her remains in a frozen state and had to allow them to thaw before examination could take place. Think carefully about what that means. Freezing a body is not an impulsive act. It requires access. It requires a decision. It requires time. Whatever happened to Mariah, the person or people responsible did not simply leave. They made deliberate choices about what to do afterward. That level of deliberateness tells investigators something critical. This was not chaotic. This was controlled. And then the house burned. Hours after her body was discovered on May 10, 2026, the same abandoned property on Georgia Avenue caught fire. No cause for the fire has been officially confirmed. No connection to Mariah's death has been stated on the record. But here is where I want to stop and ask you something directly. Because this is the question this entire case turns on. A woman is found inside a freezer in an abandoned house. Hours later that same house burns. There are two ways to look at that. The first is that it is a coincidence, that the fire was unrelated, that abandoned properties in neglected neighborhoods catch fire and the timing, while striking, means nothing. The second is that someone knew she had been found, that someone made a decision in those hours to destroy whatever else that house contained. Evidence, witnesses, a trail that led somewhere specific. Which one do you believe? Leave it in the comments, because the answer shapes everything about how this investigation needs to be approached. This community deserves people thinking critically about what happened here. As of the time this episode was recorded, Dallas police have not identified a suspect. No cause of death has been officially confirmed. No arrests have been made. The investigation is active and documented under Dallas Police Case Number 066739-2026. If you have any information about what happened to Mariah Murray on Georgia Avenue, contact Dallas Police directly using that case number or reach out to Crime Stoppers anonymously. One piece of information from one person has broken cases before. It can happen here. Here is what stays with me. When a young woman is found the way Mariah was found, in an abandoned property, with a complicated personal history, in a neighborhood that does not always receive the same investigative urgency as other parts of a city, there is a version of this story that gets smaller over time. That gets a brief and then silence. That becomes a cold case not because the leads ran out, but because the attention did. That is not going to happen here. Mariah Murray had a family that loved her. She had a laugh that people remember. She had a life that was unfinished at 27 years old, and she had someone make a decision that ended it in one of the most deliberate ways imaginable. That person, or those people, are still out there. This community is still waiting. Subscribe to CrimePattern so you do not miss the update. Because when the medical examiner releases the cause of death, when an arrest is made, when this family finally gets the answers they have been waiting for, this is where that story will be told. This story is not finished. Mariah's story is not finished. We opened with a freezer and a fire. A body found in a place nobody should end up. A house that burned hours later like someone was trying to make sure something disappeared. We still do not know who did this. We still do not know why. But deliberate decisions leave traces. And somewhere in East Oak Cliff, somebody knows more than they have said. This case will be followed until something gives. Mariah Murray, 27 years old, East Oak Cliff, Dallas, Texas. She deserved so much more than what happened on Georgia Avenue.